Many years ago, I got a job with a marketing company during phone deregulation. It was the Wild West, and a lot of small long-distance companies sprang up, all trying to get a piece of the pie. Eventually, they all got bought up by the bigger fish, but at the time they were all paying hired gun marketing firms very well to score contracts for them to lock people in. I got a job with one of those marketing firms, a new age capitalism company that insisted we all do yoga and breathing exercises while they rang a little bell and gave us affirmations about how many contracts we were all going to sell and how much money we'd all make. The job was 100% commission, but I was always good at sales, so I looked at the pay scale and noticed that it was exponential, presumably to entice people to work hard with impossible payouts. We were allowed to work as many or as few hours as we wanted, with the payout based on your weekly sales numbers. I decided I would give it a shot for 1 week to see how much I could realistically make before deciding whether I was willing to put up with the tasteless vegan snacks and mandatory voluntary yoga regime. For the next week, I pushed myself as hard as I could. For 7 straight days, I worked 14-plus-hour days every single day, and used every trick and technique I had learned doing sales to score as many contracts as I possibly could. I figured this would tell me my maximum possible income and could decide on that basis whether to stay. At the end of the week, I had blown everyone else out of the water. In fact, I had not just gotten more contracts than anyone there had ever seen in a week, I had gotten more than any of them had seen in a month. Because of the exponential scale, I realized that I was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, $10,000 plus a week. They had never expected anyone could actually hit those kinds of numbers. Coming in the next week, expecting a huge payday, I ended up with about 5% of what I expected. They told me there were problems with a lot of my contracts and that I would be allowed to fix them and submit them a few at a time over the next several weeks. These problems were things like an apostrophe wasn't quite clear or the dash in someone's phone number was slightly crooked. They were going to screw me. That night I got a phone call from the company's office manager, Frank, who wanted to meet up for a drink. Curious, I agreed. Over beers, Frank told me that the owners of the company were in a panic because I would have bankrupted them. He said they spread out all my contracts on the floor of the office, then they crawled over them, inspecting each one and trying to figure out if I was committing some kind of fraud. When they comprehended that all my contracts were legit, they decided they had no choice but to screw me over. Frank told me he realized at that point that if they would screw me, they'd screw him too, and besides, he was tired of doing yoga. He asked me if I would be interested in going into business with him and go head-to-head with his bosses. I thought it sounded intriguing, but I asked him how he thought we could compete. Frank explained that he had found out they didn't actually have the contract for our city. They were acting as independent contractors for another company who had the contract to market the service in an entirely different city. They were poaching here because the person who did have the contract wasn't actively using it. We put together a pitch and approached the guy with the real contract, Joe, and told him about the people poaching his turf. We agreed that we'd split with him. We'd take the upfront money for each contract, and he'd get the back-end money down the road. It was a good deal for everyone. So Joe contacted the phone company and had them threaten the poachers with a big lawsuit if they didn't stop. A week later, Frank and I strolled into the offices of our old employer. Most of the furniture and all the yoga mats was gone, and there was just a table, a couple of filing cabinets, and a file box with the final pay envelopes for everyone. I made a show of counting my money to make sure it was all there, and the two owners, husband and wife, told Frank and I bitterly that they'd had to take cash advances on their credit cards for this money, and asked me if I felt guilty for destroying their lives. I smiled and said, "Nope," and left. Our marketing company made us a lot of money over the year until the company got bought up by Sprint, and the gravy train ended.
Next story.
I've got one gem of a story that my grandfather told me about his hometown after he came home from World War II. It has to do with a tree framer, a corrupt mayor, and over 20 homes getting bulldozed. Enjoy. At the end of World War II, thousands of troops were heading home, starting new families, and wanted to move out of the city. There was a major housing boom all around the county. People couldn't move out of the cities fast enough, and developers could not build homes fast enough. There was a ton of money to be made in the construction business, which led to some underhanded building practices. One such practice was starting construction before the land acquisition was finalized. Enter my grandfather, G. After serving as a pilot during the war, he came home to a very different town. When my G went off to fight in 1942, the town that he described leaving was tired and worn down. But to his amazement, the town he saw stepping off the train in 1948 was anything but. Newly paved roads, a traffic light, and new homes. New homes that just went on and on. He actually got lost on his way back to the family farm, due to the new main town road being rerouted while he was away. But what took him by surprise the most was the new development being built on his childhood friend, John's tree farm. This was surprising to him, mainly because he knew how much the farm meant to John and his family. The farm went back at least 2 generations, but my G just guessed that the developer made John's family an offer too good to refuse. However, that thought was shot down later that evening during his welcome home dinner back home. It was my great-grandmother who tipped him off that something was off. He couldn't recall exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of, "Oh, I just wish John was still alive to be here." My G nearly choked, not because of the news, but because John was not dead. He was still in Hawaii. My G had gotten a postcard from him not but 4 days before. Turns out while John was off in the Navy fighting in the Pacific Theater, John's dad had suffered a stroke and passed away, and his mother passed away less than a week later from a broken heart. More than likely, John was never informed of their passing, and now 20+ homes were being built on their land. My G about ran out of the house, jumped in his father's Model T, and raced down into town to send one bombshell of a telegraph to John in Hawaii. "John, your folks passed. Farm now being built on. Come quick. G." My G never got a response back. He figures that John must have fainted from shock, then jumped up and ran to the Navy base to get on the first boat home, because he was back home in less than 4 days, and he was made. According to my G, when he burst through the doors of the mayor's office, everyone in the room looked like they were about to drop dead. The poor desk clerk was fumbling over his words, trying to talk to John. Then, the mayor came out of his office to see what all the commotion was about. As soon as he saw John, he went white as a sheet, then ran back into his office and locked the door. Getting nowhere at the mayor's office, John went to the next town over and hired a lawyer. What followed was a 7-year court case that ended in the mayor being sentenced to 8 years in jail and the developer going bankrupt. Turns out that after John's parents passed away, John wasn't able to be contacted for some reason and was just assumed dead. So when an out-of-state developer wanted to build homes in the area, the mayor just permitted them to start building on John's farm for a hefty kickback, of course. Also, because of John's lawsuit, the developer couldn't finish the pre-sold homes, which ended up in more lawsuits. In the end, the mayor and the developer and the town ended up having to pay John close to $45,000 total, which is over $75,200,000 today. And then the farm had to be returned to its prior condition. To say John was happy would be a vast understatement. Today, John's tree farm is a nature reserve, and the story of the corrupted mayor is all but forgotten except for by a few locals. John passed away in 1999. My G has been back to his hometown a few times to visit his grave and to check on the old tree farm. Thanks for reading. Sorry if it reads rough. Writing is not my strong point. But this tale of revenge was just too good not to post. Thanks. Edit just realized that GF for grandfather keeps getting mixed up with girlfriend, so now it's just G for Gramps. Edit 2 math screw up. Edit 3. I forgot that Reddit is full of grammar police. So, to shut them up, I retyped the whole story and fixed as many issues as I could find. Edit 4. A huge thank you to Poldark for fixing the remaining punctuation and grammar errors. I'm not a writer for a good reason.
Next story.
On mobile, and this is a story from when I was a kid, so apologies for formatting / not having complete details. My family was looking for a large house and found the perfect one back in the early 2000s. When my dad talked with the owners, they had agreed to getting some plumbing fixed on the house before we moved in if we moved all of their stuff into the 2-car garage, so it'd be easier for them to move. There was also several things to be repaired, a pool to clean, and a ton of landscaping to be done. My dad did the repairs and used his army of offspring to do all the landscaping, pool work, etc. The house was looking amazing compared to before, and we were a week from moving in. Now, I to this day do not know why my dad did this, but he had paid at CASH-DEPOSITE. There was no paper trail, and the owners decided to take advantage of this. When it got to be a few days before we moved in, the owners told my dad they weren't moving their stuff out of the garage or doing the plumbing fixes that were needed to use any of the bathtubs or showers in the house. He could deal with no garage and pay for the plumbing fixes, or he could fuck off. No refund of deposit if he didn't like it. They even said they were thinking of moving someone else in bake. The house value was more with all the fixes we had already done. My father asked to turn in the keys we had been given the next morning. This was all told to him at 8 p.m. on a weekday. With no paperwork yet signed, there was nothing attaching my dad to the house and no cameras or security system. He had just been fucked over a few $1,000s by the owner, and it was maybe 2 weeks to Christmas. His gift that year was going to be giving each of us kids our own rooms for the first time. Cue revenge. He brought all of us kids over to the house for a little party. Each kid was given their own special bit of destruction. Someone was shoveling sand into the pool. My brother, with anger issues, was told to punch out every hole we had patched up in the walls. The smaller kids were told to rock the banister on the stairs until it broke. I was told to rip out the landscaping we had done out and make a path of it all over the stairs. Every single thing we had fixed or improved taken back by very creative and energetic children. While all this happened, my dad and stepmom went through everything in the garage from the owners and took anything they could gift to family, pawn, or sale. There were high-value collectibles, jewelry, and a computer that my dad gave to us for Xmas. The next day, my dad told the owners he had put the keys in the garage with its door open that night for them. He then unplugged the phone, and we never heard from those people again. Was it legal? No, not on either end. Did we have a good Xmas? Yes. Was it fun destroying the place? Yes, I actually did a very tastefully done carpet of hedge branches, torn our flowers, and some or of sand and pool gravel on the actual carpet of the house. I did post this elsewhere before, but it got taken down for violating a rule. I am the op for that post as well as this post.
Next story.
Characters. UH. Ugly Ho CM. Ex-fiance's cunt mother SF. Spineless ex-fiance. My boyfriend and I were together for 9 years. On our 7th anniversary, he proposed and I said yes. But we decided that we'd get married after 2 years so that we'd have time to save up enough for the wedding. And our future kids, etc. Our families, we ecstatic except for his mother. I don't know why, but she never liked me since day one. And she was not shy in showing it. He incessantly accused me of being a whore, but mainly being a gold digger. I'm not trying to brag, but I earn more than her son, and this will be important later on. I came from a well-off and respected family in our community. Whilst preparing for the wedding, his mom took pleasure in being the goddamn pain in the ass. CM would make changes about the details of the wedding without informing me or her precious boy, such as informing my guests that their invitations were revoked to accommodate her chosen guest, whom I've never met or heard about before. Mess with the seating arrangements, and change the menu and arrangements, etc. I had to pay twice just to revert the changes she made. Of course it did not sit well with her, So being the ever-mature adult that she is, she cried and threw a tantrum, a fucking tanturium. I am not a confrontational person, and I easily get anxious when I feel tension arise. Thank God SF's grandparents, from fiance's father's side, were really lovely people, and oft my beautiful grandma. They were the main reason why I was able to put up with all the bullshit she was doing. Belittling was one of her hobbies, so it did not come as a surprise when she berated me about my wedding dress, which was gorgeous too, and it was handmade by my mom's best friend, who's like my second mother. It took a year and 3 months to finish the dress. In short, the dress was really, really special to me. I never ever raised my voice, nor said anything negative about CM. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when she stole my wedding dress 2 months before the wedding and destroyed it because she didn't like design. I had a full-on anxiety attack when I found about what she'd done, and whilst my anxiety attack, she never lifted a finger to help, but she was on her usual routine, calling my anxiety attack as a cry for attention, and that I was just being over-dramatic. It was too late to fix the dress, so I ended up buying a new wedding dress. By this time, we were way over our budget for the wedding because of this monster. Wedding day comes. Lo and behold, my dashing fiancé was a no-show. No one knew where he was, and no one could reach him. I was devastated, and a crying mess. And of course, CM thought it was a perfect opportunity to verbally attack and mock me. TBA, it still hurts me every time I remember this. Up to this day, I honestly believe nothing will ever make me feel so pathetic. I showed up to work the following day, desperately trying to distract myself from all the fiasco. And 3 days after, I found out that he had been cheating on me for a year with a mutual friend. The worst part was we all worked at the same place. As I said, I am not a confrontational person, so I did my best to avoid them and avoid the drama. But UV started tormenting me by purposely showing off how sweet Estef was, how he treats her like a princess, topped with nauseating public display of affection, and was spreading rumors and talking shit about me just to get me riled up. But it didn't work. With the help of CM, started targeting my family. As I mentioned, my family is well respected in our community, and everyone knew what went down between us. So some of our close friends informed us about H's malicious comments about our family. Of course, my ex-fiancé, being the ever spineless bitch he is, did nothing and sided with his new hoe. I am really close with my grandma. She was the one who raised me when both my parents died. I love and respect the woman. She is an epitome of what a classy woman is. She has this aura that was really kind and comforting, but can be very intimidating when the situation calls for it, which is why she is well respected and well loved in our community. She always had a smile on her face and treated everyone well. And if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would make it after all that had happened to me. So when H started bad-mouthing her, I was hell-bent on destroying her and my spineless and ass-less bitch ex-fiancé. I was beyond furious at this point, thus I started scheming on how I planned to drag them down. I talked to my grandma about it, but she convinced me not to do so, and that I should just leave our hometown for a while to take a breather and take some time to heal myself, etc. After weeks and weeks of discussions, and I eventually saw how everything that had happened and currently happening was taking a toll on my mental and emotional health, I conceded defeat to my grandma's idea. So I left, didn't contact anyone from the hometown except my grandma oft. 2 years passed, and I received an invitation for our high school reunion. By this time, I've been really missing my friends and family, so I decided that it was high time to return and reconnect with my old friends and family. Everyone was surprised to see me, but everyone was really warm and welcoming. It certainly felt like I was back home. Everything was going well. I was in line to get a refill of my drink when I overheard 2 girls blabbering about how H was pregnant and the father of the child married man. I was curious as fuck, but decided not to pry about since I no longer want to be on the loop about whatever was going on about them. The following day, I met up with my favorite cousin, and my curiosity got the best of me, so I asked him about what went on when I left. And oh boy, I was not ready for the tea. My grandma always had a gleeful disposition. She always greeted everyone and engaged in small talks with anyone. But apparently, when I left, she started to act differently. The happy grandma from the next door was gone. She always had a gloomy smile. Even the way she talks changed. She talked about how bad she felt for me, how she was hurting so much that me, her precious granddaughter, was going through such a rough time, how it broke her heart knowing that she couldn't do anything to ease my pain. People around us knew Grandma as someone who hates to be seen as weak and helpless. Thus, it was truly a heartbreaking surprise when they saw Grandma at such state. Despite her lamenting about my unfortunate situation, she had nothing but kind words for SF, CM, and UA. Everyone revered me and my grandma for handling the situation ever so gracefully. Their words, not mine. Despite all the bad blood, we took the high road. People now started treating SF and CM differently. They became a social pariah. After hearing what both SF and CM did and how they treated me, especially CM, most family members cut their ties with them. CM's husband, a good man, but very timid, apparently was my grandma's student, filed for a divorce and declared that CM could have whatever she wanted for the marriage as long as he doesn't have to deal with her anymore. As for SF, most of our mutual friends sided with me through the ordeal. SF was being groomed to be promoted for a takeover as the department chief, and this was huge because if it went through, SF would be the youngest chief in the company's history. But due to what had happened and the fact that his boss, my second mom's husband, was a close family friend of ours, it all went down the drain. SF was not fired from his job because boss thought it would be such an easy way out, and because my grandma spoke to boss that firing SF would be wrong and unprofessional, and again playing her sweet old lady card. Was caught having an affair with one of her boss. Unfortunately, this boss of hers was married. The wife found out about the affair, but didn't know who the third party was. Obviously, divorce papers were filed, and both parties agreed that it was a no-fault divorce, until the wife received incriminating evidences of both UF and the boss, which were sent anonymously. Grandma hired a private investigator to collect enough evidence to incriminate both UH and boss. Not only did the wife sue for 80% of their property, but she also filed case to have UH license to be revoked on grounds of moral turpitude. As the investigation went on, they found out that UH and boss had been stealing from the company. One thing people did not know about my grandma is that she's really conniving. She knows how to play that sweet lady card all too well. TLDR, fiancé was a no-show on our wedding day. 3 days after the whole fiasco, I found out that he had been cheating on me for a year with one of our mutual friends. Grandma pretends to be a sweet old lady made it her mission to destroy their lives one by one. Edit update. My grandma just told me she saw Uwe at the grocery store and decided to have a small talk with her. She approached Uwe with a smile on her face and a bottle of olive oil on her left hand. My grandma is very soft-spoken. With a huge, sickly sweet smile, she proceeded to talk shit about Uwe. Of course, Uwe, being Uwe, was pissed and started yelling at my grandma. A fellow shopper saw what went on and called the manager and the security. When the manager asked about what happened, Uwe began furiously explaining and repeating what my grandma just said to her. My awesome grandma then put on her gloomy smile and said that I approached her because I wanted to know if this was the right kind of cooking oil I was looking for. I couldn't read the label since I forgot my glasses at home. I'm sorry, miss. I didn't mean to bother you. I just needed some help. And this infuriated you. The manager turned to Uet and said, ma'am, the old lady just needed some help, and I'm pretty sure she would leave you alone if you just tell her you did not want to be bothered. My grandma then said, it's all right, sir. I was at fault here. Again, I'm sorry, miss. Hope you have a lovely day ahead. Everyone who saw the commotion gave Uwe dirty looks at the grocery store, and some were really sweet and offered to assist and accompany my grandma while doing her groceries.